I'm still catching my breath. Um, Such a wonderful, powerful work. Thank you. Right?
Thank you very
Just
much.
amazing. Uh,
Thank you.
so we are gonna have a few minutes of our conversation, and we're gonna soon pass the mic to you, because I'm sure people have things to ask and say and confess and exclaim, and we'll see where this is going. But I want to make my own confession, and first of all say that it's been a while since I've been moved so much by a documentary. So thank you for that. And I saw the buds of this, the very begin, the seeds of this, 2 years ago almost, in Stockholm, when we were both there. There was a wonderful event organized by the Jewish Cultural Institute there, led by Lizzie Oved Sheja, a wonderful friend. And it was on the night of the Nobel Prizes. And this was a kind of a subtle European pushback against what I think the egregious decision of the Nobel Committee not to give Amos Oz the Nobel Prize. We will not forgive, nor Philip Roth. So these are the two ones we were not going to. And at that night, which filled auditoriums, and it was a very intense evening, I think the highlight of the evening was the short version of this, I'm going to just say it, this masterpiece of a documentary cinema. And it could have gone to so many ways from that nucleus. And I'm very curious about your process, because we know his work, but here there's another work which is really novelistic in nature, what you've done here. So I want to, there's so many things I would like to ask you about your process. And I want to know how, first of all, how you made the choices about what comes in and what comes out. When did this idea sting you? How long it took before it came to fruition? Tell us everything.
Okay, I'll tell you everything.
Everything.
But firstly, thank you for the Other Israel Festival for inviting me in the film. And thank you, Ruby, for hosting the evening and having such a beautiful guest appearance in the film. And thank you, Tony Young and the American Friends of Ben Gurion University that supported the film in the early stage and allowed it to happen. As for your question, the film began on the day that Amos Oz died. I got a call from the Israeli television, am I making a film about Amos Oz? And I said yes. And I embarked on a journey. And in the beginning of the journey, we were looking for materials. So we're collecting archives. There is many archival treasures here, not only connected to Amos Oz, but also connected to the story and history of Israel. Just for example, you see the black and white photos from the November UN resolution night.
Yes.
So this is the first time you see this kind of photos, because usually you see people dancing on the streets.
True.
And now you see photos of people before the decision, yes, worried. And the second thing we did, we were looking for the storyline. And then we came across the recordings of Nurit Gertz. She was writing a story, a biography of Amos Oz, and she used the recordings of the last 2.5, 3 years of Amos's life. And we got some sample of it, and we decided, we is the editor, fantastic editor, Nili Feller. I think you saw the film Ahmed Zni here, and also the Ari Fulman film. So she's editing all of these films. She's a prominent editor. She was my partner in making this film. And we got samples from Nurit Gertz, and we decided that this is with this main storyline, the recordings, but and also to make Nurit Gertz the main storyteller.
Yes. Which is a choice. It is a choice.
It was our choice. And also Nurit Gertz was a little bit of a diva.
Yeah.
So she just, she gave me 10 minutes, 5 minutes. She gradually gave me the recordings. And all the part when Amos talks about his daughter was censored. They could not have
So
did
we're
have
going to
access
talk
to
about
it
that.
for
We're
all
gonna
of
talk.
the months and years of making of the film. So this is one storyline. The second storyline is the biographical and literary storyline. It is a third minor storyline, which is a political
Yes.
storyline, and where I think about 60, maybe 60 people working on the film for more than 2 years, for 2.5 years,
Yeah.
and later on we decided to base the film on the idea of the window, the four windows. Amos Oz is looking from the window, Nurit Gez looking in the windows, and the background of the windows. Since we shot in COVID times,
Oh.
yes, so we're looking at the windows, but we couldn't show masks of people walking through from the boulevard. So I hired the Fringe Theater Klipa from Tel Aviv, 20 actors, and they. So if you see the film for the second or third time, you see the
Okay.
and also this is my son and my husband, and
And
also
you?
no, I
No,
was
you were
I was in
behind.
the
Okay,
balcony.
okay.
That's one
Because
of the
there was
things.
this really handsome guy standing there, and I was
My
oh
son.
yeah, yes. For those of you who don't know, Yair is responsible, like the creator, of one of the most important series of documentary works called Ha'ivrim, the Hebrews, which really narrates in I think in a magnificent way. That's why I was so happy to be part of this project. Narrates the story of the revival of the Hebrew language and literature and culture, and this is a part of this series. And usually, it's dead poets that you deal with. Here too, you said he just died, but he was a very living dead for a while. So
Fresh dead.
fresh, yeah,
Freshly dead.
very much alive for someone who was dead. And it was so. Was this substantially different from working with like Yona Volach?
Two words about the Hebrews. It's a project that's, I think, for the last 11 years, that's the biggest, largest documentary project in Israel, focusing on Jewish literature. And the films there is about Leah Goldberg, Bialik, Zelda, but also Avraham Sutzkever from Yiddish, Jacqueline Kahanov, Shabazi. So it's writers from the last 400 years from the Jewish spiritual world of writing. And I produced the film, but I ask usually directors, the 10 directors of the 16 film already of the series, and other artists. So I think there was hundreds of Israeli artists that involved in the making of this film. Every film is very different portrait, and usually they're dead for some years, and that allows me and the people that make the film to have some distance. So how canonic, what will survive, what is the story to tell? And it was very different in the case of Amos Oz in the two stages, the two heartbeats. The first one was the film began just when he died, so there is no perspective. And we have to make the film as it would be from 5 years on 10 years on, and to imagine what will be his future role in the canon. And of course, you know, there's so many waves that changes the memory and the place of a writer, and I should prophetic or no, to predict what would happen. And the second beat was the family beat of Galia, and also this had to change the film. And at the same time, so one of the most charming people interviewed here is Aleph Bet Yoshua Buli.
Yes.
And we became such good friends. So when I asked him to give an interview to the film, and then he asked me, am I making films about living writers? And I said no. And then I changed my mind. And I made a film about him, which was in the last Jerusalem Film Festival, and it will be here in January also in New York.
In January, the film about Bully, it's a must.
So not only that I made a film about the freshly dead Amos Oz with no perspective, then there is a new film about a
living author.
The whole notions that I used in the creation of the Hebrew in the beginning are changing constantly, which causes me to be more awake.
Yeah, wonderful. One last question, and we're gonna pass the mic to the audience. I mean, to me, it was a huge elephant in the room. You seem to have made friends with the elephant and put the elephant in the film. The story of Galia, the tragedy of Galia, that is so beautifully and honestly and openly dealt here, caused a lot of turmoil in Israel for a while. Was this a big challenge for you to when you were making the film? Did you have to navigate? I know you may not be able to speak about everything, but were you even tempted for a minute to just downplay it?
The story of Galia, so Nuri did not give me the recordings. And it was agreed with Galia and the rest of the family that he will not be in the film. And this is the story of Amos. But then I finished the film. On a weekend, I was celebrating with my friends. It was Saturday. And in Sunday morning, I opened the Haaretz website, and Galia's book was coming out. And I knew I must incorporate in some way the story of Galia in the story of Amos, because otherwise it will bury the film. It's impossible. Now there's a new narrative coming out, and the question is how to incorporate and integrate. And I was facing, I think it took several months. We didn't know what to do. There was pressure from some families, from Galia, from people who paid for the film, from Israeli television, and from Arte and ZDF. Many pressure. We have to find the thin line, and the person who made the best contribution to solve this was Nurit Gertz, which not only gave the recordings, it was amazing recording, because his broken voice talking about the thing that hurts him the most in the last few months of his life, and but also her saying in the film about the talking about the double tragedy.
Yes.
So she found the way to find the elephant, and Amos put it together in a narrative, which allows the story to be told somehow and deals with it, but still gives Amos a voice very much.
Yeah, and I was very taken by how you dealt with it. I was like fighting back the tears, and I feel that you're right, that maybe the way that Nurit put it at the end with the double tragedy could give all of us, the lovers of Oz's work, but those who understand the complexity of human relations, it gave me a new frame of thinking about the story. So this could be a real contribution to the conversation about Oz.
And I think, the memory of Amos is still struggling with...
It is.
Still struggling in Israel and outside of Israel, in the public discourse, in the press, and the family. It's still very much alive.
Yes, and especially I think because the duality that you touched here in the film, that he at the same time was a writer, and a very dark writer, very dark author, and at the same time had this image of this kind of secular saint, and that called for a lot of criticism that would have been maybe not lashed at him otherwise. There's a lot more to talk about, but I think that we have very interesting questions, I'm sure, in the audience. Bevakasha. A lovely lady in a mask, Shirley.
Excuse me. I have my own theory about Galia, by the way. I think for Amos Oz, she was the one who stood for his mother, because she was the middle child, and if you read A Story of Love and Darkness, you can see how she takes the same place that his mother took in her own original family. But that's my theory. Okay. Amos Oz, as you actually implied, but not just, you said it explicitly, he was hated by several parts, let's say, of Israel, and he would struggle with these parts. And I was simply interested to know how your own series, the Havrim, how did it deal with the question of the non-Ashkenazi, the tension between the ethnic tension in Israel, and were you attacked as not as also being, you know, Ashkenazi and Canonic and someone who should not be representing this part of Israel?
Not yet, probably. There are 4 films in the series from the 16 that are for non-Ashkenazi writers, and I'm worried about the representation of non-Ashkenazi as well. I'm worried about the representation of not enough women, not enough gays at all. I want to make a film about Chezi Leslie, but you know the project is not done. It will take a while. I devote actually my life to get more funds for more films, and this culture factory is moving on, and I hope it will be a bigger and fair representation to more communities in Israel.
I just want to say, I think by the time you're ready to quit, you're gonna have a lot of writers who are not Ashkenazi, and you'll be fine. Please.
Wait, ma'am. No, you have to use the microphone so we can record it. And we'll take questions from the mic over there from now on.
Hi. Did I understand correctly that you knew the story about Galia before it broke in Israel? Is that correct? That's what I thought you said. Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask you was whether you were aware, and of course you were, that at that last segment of the film where Oz is talking about how worthless he felt all his life. He had this big hole in his heart. And, well, these are almost the same words that Galia says when she talks about him. Nachon, did you, like...
There is some resemblance. I don't know if she read it before she wrote what she wrote. And I was aware of Galia's stories. I will share with you that my sister... I have I have many brothers and sisters, but the 2 big sisters are the best friends of Galia for many years. My sister was in a kibbutz, and they kept, and it was like a silent agreement that there will be no communication, I will not dealing, but I think her friendship with my sister gave me some protection from not being in the eye of the storm, and I was not attacked. I was allowed to do this without sharing both sides of the family in the process of the film. But I have good relation with all of the parties, and the family was very generous with giving materials, recovered materials along the way. It's a very big blow to the family, and it's very much alive. Nothing is more relaxed. It's very vivid, still very vivid. He talks about the wound, so Amos Oz is wounded now in the public sphere, and I think it's also the film feels it in its acceptance, and it's screened in Israel.
We have another question here.
Yair, thanks for a wonderful documentary. Ruby, for a great conversation. A question for both of you. Something I loved about this film was hearing from so many different sorts of writers about what Oz meant to them. I think he certainly thought about himself as a European writer. Of course, he wrote in Hebrew, and then he's had such a significant influence on American Jewish writing. And I'm curious for each of you maybe to talk about what is it in Oz's literature that lets him speak to such different traditions? And I'm curious, you don't have to speculate, but where you think in the long run he might have the most significant influence of those three different literary traditions. Thanks.
I'll leave you the complicated question.
Okay, I love that. When I was writing about the A Tale of Love and Darkness sometime and for some place, and during my research, I found out that Oz himself was shocked by the success of his memoir, and I was shocked to find out that it was the book of the year in China. And Oz said to an interviewer, "I thought this is a book for the chevre, for the like a bunch of us, the people who lived in Jerusalem in that time, and it's really esoteric." This goes to show that we don't know about the secret life of books. We write books and we have a whole fantasy about what is going to happen with the book, what is it supposed to say, who's supposed to read it, who's supposed to like it. And books, especially good books, are very surprising in the way they... So your question is wonderful because you're onto it, that we have no idea. We have no idea if Oz is going to remain in the public mind as a Hebrew author or a universal author. We honestly don't know if authors are going to remain and this is a man who gave his life to literature, and I don't know if we will be remembered at all in 50 years. It could be that our medium in general is going to become, like for small group of connoisseurs. My bet, it's stupid to bet on these things, but I never refuse the good bet, is that he's going to mostly remain in the Hebrew sphere. Because for me, his Hebrew, which some of the speakers, Ariel Hirschfeld speaks about, his Hebrew was larger than life, really larger than life. And for me, his contribution was not just as a great storyteller, but a recreator of the Hebrew. So for me, he will always be the great Hebrew author of the 20th century, after Agnon.
I saw the film about 400, 500 times, and I'm trying sometimes to find new angles to the film. And one of the last angles that I found is that the film is in a way like a long funeral party, yes? With all the contestants and the rivals and the admirers and the writers and the critics come to pay tribute, and they have a text and they have a subtext and they have a subtext, and it's another way to see the films. So that's also kind of an answer to you.
I'm Carol Zabar. This is my film festival. I was in Amos's class at Hebrew University. We both studied philosophy. And even before I ever sat down in one class, everybody knew his name. Everybody knew he was at Hebrew U, that he was in the philosophy department. When you went into a class, you knew where he was sitting. One of the head of the department would say, "Umadatcha Amos." What do you think, Amos? So, of course, he was gorgeous, but there was this aura about him that I probably have never seen before or since, of confidence. He was 23. What did he have to be confident about? But when he spoke, and even when he sat, there was something that he just exuded this. And I always wondered, why did everybody know who he was when he was 23? He hadn't written a book yet. I knew he had written some articles, but where did this fame come from? That's my question to you.
Where did his fame come from?
He was 23.
Yes, I think he went to a meeting younger than that with Ben Gurion as a representative of the young generation.
That's what his father told me. I worked with his father at the library, and he said he had a meeting with him, and he asked Ben Gurion if he should move to Kibbutz Holda, which I don't believe, because that's not the story he tells in the Tale of Love and Darkness. But still, even if he had a meeting with Ben Gurion, why would that make him famous?
I can only guess, I do not know, that he was extremely charismatic,
He was.
beautiful, smart, and I think he was a great strategist. Yes, one of his good friends was Israel Tal, the inventor of the Merkava tank. Yes, and I think he saw several moves ahead. It was amazing for me to learn in my research that he had dozens and dozens of regular phone calls each week to several circles of friends, publishers, writers. He knew what the literary age is going to say before he said it. He was involved in 45 countries in choosing the covers, the translators, the journalistic cover. His mind was bigger and greater than most other people, so he was sort of a superstar genius, really. Yes, and he held all this his factory of Amos Oz. The industry of Amos Oz was on his shoulder. It worked wonderfully internationally for many, many years. It a little bit faded towards the end, and it's a little bit collapsed after he died because no one there was to manage this. Yes, he didn't held the forces and the contradicting forces. You know, I heard from young friends of mine, writers, that published their first book, and several days later they would get a call from Amos telling them how wonderful is their book. That's the thought of a strategist. And when he's gone, who's the general now? So no general for this army. I don't know if it's a good metaphor. But you see, it didn't take many months, and then nobody's maintaining this arena, and Galia comes, and everything is at danger of. And it's very sad that and the family and the people that love him are frustrated because he's not there to maintain this beautiful creation that he made. One of the names for the film was the man who invented Amos Oz.
Can I answer too? I think this is such a good question. What makes someone be the chosen? And he was a chosen. נכון? נבחר. And I think about this again, as a novelist, people like him fascinate me. We have to remember that the Hebrew society of Israel, the Hebrew-speaking society, was very small and kind of intimate. We're talking about a very small number of people. He likes to present himself like he was from poverty, this and that, but he was Klausner's nephew. It doesn't hurt, you know. They were poor aristocrats. I mean, he was related to one of the great minds of. But I think for me, perhaps the most important thing is that there was a thirst for symbols. And he was very, very good, and he says it in the film, at playing the symbol. He catered to people's fantasies. Amos Oz was someone that people projected tons of fantasy on. No one projects on bully this kind of fantasy because bully is like bully, you know. Well, I don't know. Amos Oz lent himself. He lent himself to projection of fantasy, and I think now we see also the dark side of the fantasy. So he was seeking it desperately.
We have a question up here. Did you want to add first?
Oh yes, that's the third person in this is Bully, Amos, it's Grossman, the three big tenors. It's also a film coming out. Did I say? There's a new film about Grossman. It's called Grossman. So there's three documentaries that tell this Amos, this number two, and this perhaps the heir to the yes.
Thank you, Yair, and thank you, Ruby. I want to mention something, Ruby, but you said that he was a dark writer. A lot of his titles is about darkness. And to me, the most powerful part of the film was when he was able to express his most darkest side, his vulnerability of all. But after all, I felt that the movie was more apologetic and more showing his light than his darkness. If you could maybe explain or say why you shied away, or how do you see his dark side?
It's a question for me or not for? No. Okay. I made a film with available materials, and only I saw mainly darkness of vulnerability in the recordings from Nuri that I got towards the end of the film. So how do you say? Amos was very hermetic. He didn't show his vulnerability. It was not on record, so I cannot use. I can use only what's on record, and I was given only towards the end of the film. Before I came across Nurit Gertz's recordings, I sort of making the film with Shira Haddad, his literary editor. That's a film, what Masui Tapuach came out a few years before. And there is still more hermetic. He maintains his position. So it opens a little bit, but not really. And I think I should thank Galia for causing what she caused and allowing, that's for a very small perspective of a documentary filmmaker, and allowing this recording from Nurit to come out and rereading Amos Oz through them as much as they could be used and shown in the film.
I want to pick up on what Yair says and say that the recordings that you had and you put very boldly, bravely, were, for anyone who knew Amos Oz and knows his legacy, this was very intense to hear this, because he held his cards very close to the chest. And when you met him at the end of his days, you really felt that the public persona stifled. Like there was, maybe he felt hollow inside. There was so much formality, and he was a very generous, supported young artists, supported young writers. But there was always this feeling that he's guarded by a big wall. I never imagined that I will hear him the way we just heard him tonight. So this film, I think, is really an important, it's not yet another documentary. I feel this is an important cornerstone in the legacy of Oz, because this is the least guarded I've seen him. Because you see, even in the early interviews, he speaks. His face is in pain because you feel he's speaking already scripted, something he had to think before. And here, when he was speaking to Nurit Gretz on the phone, he really sounded like himself. And that's amazing to hear, actually.
It's possible to think that he spoke to Nurit Gertz as if he was not recording it. Yes. It's possible. But it's also possible that he was telling his last story and he still maintained the position of the story.
I was almost tempted to ask you if he knew.
I don't know. If he knew that he's recorded.
Yes.
Yes, but I thought he was feeling that and sensing that all of the time, and whether he decided this is going to be my last story, or whether he said, I will not write stories anymore. I know it, I'm telling you how I feel. So I don't know what is the, how much he controlled his last story or not, I don't know. But I know that his friendship with Nurit is very, very rare. He allowed himself to be really open with her. And she's an amazing woman. I really thank her for opening the doors to these archives and recorders, taking part of the film. And she's a diva, but a wonderful diva.
Yair, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby. Thank you, Yair. Thank you for a beautiful film. Thank you all for being a part of this. At 8:30, we're screening here, and I was there. And then tomorrow night, 200 meters. Please join us. Please tell your friends. This film's available online for another 24 hours or so. Have a good night. Thank you very much.